Once a long time ago, down in the big woods of Tennessee, there lived an old man in a log cabin all by himself. Now that cabin was just one room, and at one end of the cabin was a big old stone fireplace. And every evening, the old man would come in and cook whatever he caught on that big old open fire. Now if he caught a rabbit or a deer or a fish, he'd just roast it right there. But if he didn't catch any meat, he'd just cook himself a big old pot of beans. Now one cold, dark, and windy night, that old man was sitting up by that fireplace, cooking a pot of beans and listening to the wind howl through the trees outside. He was just kind of lost in his thoughts, watching those beans begin to boil and that fire burn down low, when all of a sudden he looked down and he saw some kind of animal's paw start to come up through a hole in the floorboards of the house. And that was a hole he should have fixed way last summer, but too late now. That thing was coming in. It had big, long, pointy teeth and big, fiery red eyes, and why, it was big as a dog, but had a tail like nothing he'd ever seen before. Well, he slowly reached down and picked up a little hatchet that was by the fireplace and raised it up over his head. When that thing came in the room, he chopped at it, and he chopped its tail right off. Well, that thing let out an awful yell and went running back out between the floorboards of the house. Now, that old man had lived in those woods his whole life and never seen a creature like that before. But there its old tail was, still sitting on the floor wiggling. Well, he reached down and he picked it up, and it was a big old long thing, and it didn't have any hair on it, just some old spine-like things, and why, it did have a lot of meat. He didn't have any meat for those beans, so he just dropped that tail into those beans and cooked it on down. And then, like a fool, he ate it. Well, it tasted pretty good to him. In fact, he ate every bean in that pot. But when he finished, he realized he was getting an awful stomachache. Well, he decided he better go to bed, so he crawled on over to the bed and crawled into bed, pulled the covers up around his head, put his head down on the pillow, and he was just about to go to sleep when he heard a little scratching sound up the side of the house. He raised up in bed and he said, "Yeah, now go on, get out of here. Get out of here." But all he heard was, "Tailybone, Tailybone, I want my Tailybone." Well, the old man figured somebody was trying to play a trick on him. He said, "Now go on and get out of here, whoever you are. Just go back home." But all he heard was, "Tailybone, Tailybone, I want my Tailybone." Well, the old man called his dogs that lived up under the house. He said, "Ano, Uno, come to Calico, get that thing." And those dogs ran out from under the house, and they chased that thing way back down to the woods. Well, the old man went to the door and he listened, and he could hear those dogs barking way down in the woods. He knew they were mean dogs. He didn't even worry. Just closed that door and went right back to bed. Crawled up into bed and went right to sleep. But he hadn't been to sleep long when he was awakened by a little scratching sound. This time it was above the door. Something was trying to come in through the door. He sat up in bed and he said, "Nah, I told you to get out of here. Just go on. Get out of here. Go." But all he heard was, "Tailybone, Tailybone, I want my Tailybone." Well, the old man called his dogs again. He said, "Ano, Uno, come to Calico. Get rid of that thing." Well, those dogs ran out from under the house, and they almost tore down the fence getting at that thing. This time the old man went to the door, and he listened, and way down in the woods he could hear those dogs barking. And they stopped. Well, kind of concerned the man, but he figured maybe they had gotten that thing down in a hole and he couldn't hear him. But this time when he closed the door, he locked it. He crawled back up into bed, and why, he tossed and turned a long time, but he finally did go to sleep. But about midnight, he was awakened by what he thought was the sound of the wind. He sat up in bed, and way down in the woods he could hear,
Tailybone, Tailybone, I'll get my Tailybone.
Well, the old man sat up at bed. He's kind of scared this time. He said, Ano, Uno, come to Calico, get that thing. But all he heard was the sound of that wind. He called him again. Ano, Uno, come to Calico. But that thing had taken those dogs down in the woods and lost them, or killed them. The old man got out of bed. He didn't know what to do. First thing he did was go around and close all the shutters on all the windows and bar 'em tight. And then he built up a big old roaring fire in the fireplace so nothing could come down through the chimney. Then he went around and barred the front door shut. And then he remembered that hole where that thing had come in earlier in the night. And he got some old rags he had and stuffed them tight down in that hole. And then he got a big rock he used for a doorstop in the summer and put over the top of the rag so nothing could come up through the floor. But he couldn't sleep. He just got that little hatchet and started walking around the room, waiting for that thing to come back. Waiting, watching, listening, walking. To what he figured was all night long. He was so tired. But he figured if the sun was coming up, why, he would be safe. So he went over the window to open it up and look out. He opened the shutter and it kind of creaked when he opened it. And he looked out. Ha! And sure enough, the sun was coming up. Oh, he felt so good. Well, he closed that shutter and just went back over to the bed and, just fell right down in the bed. Pulled the covers up around his shoulders when he heard, at the foot of the bed, it said,
Tailybone.
He said, I ain't got your old Tailybone. That thing said,
You got my Tailybone.
And it jumped on that man, and they say it scratched him to pieces. And some folks say that thing got its Tailybone. Now you can go down to the big woods of Tennessee to this very day. You won't see the cabin anymore. It's long gone. All that's left is the old chimney standing out in the field. But sometimes, late at night, when the moon is full and the wind is howling through the trees, they say you can still hear it. It'll say,
Tailybone, Tailybone, I got my Tailybone.